Hey, my name is Darius, and welcome back to Founders Unchained, the show where we sit down with founders, builders, innovators, and investors, with people who are sharing their real life experiences, what it takes to build startup from scratch. And today we have a special guest, Rodney Prescott, who is the CEO of Entry Protocol. It's a pleasure to meet you, Rodney, and thank you for joining this episode.
Great pleasure to meet you too, Darius. I'm looking forward to our conversation. We've got some great questions I've seen that you've already sent through, so should be interesting.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Can you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background, what you do and what your business does?
I'll give you what I do currently and what the business is about, or it's actually foundation is about. I'm the CEO. We're a compliance protocol slash platform, if you want to look at it as anything else like that. We're about ensuring that you're going to be compliant with all the new regulations coming in.
It looks like that you are coming from corporate world, and it's really interesting to hear, how do you feel to start working in the free industry?
When I was doing work with the Cardano Foundation, we really started pushing Web3, and it was actually the Wyoming, I can't remember, it was 2022. We did a whole lot of Web3, we did a lot of animation, we did a lot of use for the Cardano and the Web3 space. And it was really interesting to me. That was when, NFTs were the excitement of the day. To me, I actually really enjoy it, but I always say, well, I'm always looking, how do you practically apply it? I've always been on the edge. So in different things, like I actually helped set up Internet New Zealand in New Zealand. I was the Internet Council and helping get the telco to move ahead. We actually got the telco broken up because otherwise you'd never have internet. If there's an incumbent telco and they're like the only state one operator, then it's pretty hard for anything to work. So I'm quite used to bleeding edge. I did think I played Segway Polo against Steve Wozniak on Segways. I mean, that was really weird and out there, but that was because we were trying to get him to help launch a interesting business, which was hotspots. This is before hotspots and everyone had 4G, 5G. So I have no issues with Web3, but people, if you're doing business, still have to think about how do we coexist with what already exists, and regulators think in regulatory terms of bits of paper or things that they can understand. Although Web3 seems a bit like the Wild West, it's not. It's getting shaped closer and closer. I actually think you're going to have not just TradFi and DeFi, you're actually going to have Fi. They're going to converge. And you can see MiCA's just one start. It's not perfect, but it's happening. In Australia, they've banned under 16 using social media. Governments and countries are going, oh, well, how do we deal with all this? I mean, it's happening. They can't stop it. It's a bit like the printing press or trains or shipping and cargo going from sail to power. All these things, these trends. So once they start, you can't really roll them back. I think the big advantage I have is that I have worked with legacy and regulators, and I understand a lot of their challenges. Traditional finance spends huge amounts of their investment on keeping compliant. Not, everyone goes, oh, they're not innovating. Their web interface is useful or their mobile app's not good. Well, they're so worried about getting hammered that they're more interested in making sure they don't get hammered. And the problem with that is that the end users or the clients or customers or whoever they're dealing with are not quite an afterthought, but it's hard for them to put a lot of focus on it. They put a focus on the negative aspects of it. What's cool about Web3 is they focus on the usability, the interaction, and the freedom.
You are doing the right project in the right time with Entry Protocol. I remember 5 years ago when you used to be in the free industry, it was like a bunch of people just making small transactions, or maybe even, higher transactions. But at that moment, the compliance, it wasn't so important for the institutional players in the market. Right now, I can see that there are loads of institutional players coming into the market, and then it's becoming important. And we do like millions and billions of transactions every single day. So right now the compliance, it's really becoming important part of the free. And I think your project, what you do, actually, it's so important. And I think more and more digital assets need to be secured, and compliance, this is the way to go.
Yeah, and it's not about restricting people. What's really important is the entry protocol. So we have two components to it, which is one part is the identity, which is really cool. It's self-sovereign identity. You control it, not anyone else. However, if you want to interact, say you're an EU citizen and you want to interact with a country that has a lot different rules and a lot stricter, then before you do the transaction, the platform will say, well, actually, if you're going to do this transaction, even though you're an EU citizen, you have to provide this information. If you don't want to, that's fine. Can't do the transaction. Rather than afterwards and getting it all mucked up, who's got my data? You think about all the EU and that law professor, I can't remember, it was from Belgium or whatever, continuously suing Facebook under EU law for privacy. The regulations are so complex in some jurisdictions, but it's all about you controlling and making sure you're compliant. So if the regulator in your jurisdiction asks you for something, you can provide it. You don't have to. Well, then again, there may be different implications. That it's like you don't have to open your bank account or your safe. But if the police raid and there's a warrant, well, you don't really have a lot of choice. I mean, that's an extreme. But it still safeguards your privacy. You're in control of it, and that's really important. The next thing is we use the AI bit to make sure, well, you can do that, but you're not exposing your information. It's not held in a central database. The transaction's all encrypted. So great, good luck for the hackers. Whereas right now, if you look at centralized databases, centralized organizations, there's so many issues and so many breaches. A lot of people are losing money, getting defrauded. The numbers in the UK here for fraud, and the bankers are actually having to go at the big tech guys. The big tech guys, if it's too hard for us, it's your problem. Look at it at your end. The government's going scratch. Well, they may legislate, and it is happening. Europe's got some interesting legislation over who's at fault. Why worry about it after it happens? Start clean so you can actually be compliant, so that when enforcement starts happening, you know you've done the right thing. As an example, you're MiCA compliant. But more importantly, if you're required to produce returns or anything, that happens. There's nothing stopping regulators now in enforcement. So like here, the regulations may come out of the FCA, the Bank of England, or in tax legislation, but the enforcement comes out of Her Majesty's Tax Office, HMRC. And just because it occurred 7 years ago when it was the Wild West doesn't mean they aren't going to have a good look, because they can, and they're legally allowed to. I think it's a good way to thinking going ahead, not I don't want this, I don't want to be involved. That's okay. There are ways, people are doing things to get around it. But the reality is, for the average person or for most people, and if you want to deal with institutions and you want to leverage this new FI, instead of DeFi and TradFi, this new opportunity, you might as well start in the right way. But you're in control, not us, no one else. And you're not leaving your thing like your passport or your driver's license at some organization you don't really know, and maybe in a jurisdiction you have no control over.
Yeah. Agree. So I think this is an important question to ask. What specifically you are focused on with entry protocol? For the people who will be watching this episode, I think, it will be important to understand how specifically your solution works and what you are offering for the market.
We're just talking about a compliance layer. We don't care what chain you're running on. We don't care what your asset is. As long as it's tokenized, because if it isn't, it's a bit, well, actually, no, that's unfair. The AI we could eventually bring in real world assets that aren't tokenized, because you could look up a property, but that's miles away. I'm not thinking about that, because we're really thinking about how do you merge these two together. And it's aimed about having known parties, clean parties, without exposing personally identifiable information. You're in control. If you're required to provide an address or a tax residency, it's your decision. You do this transaction, we need to know you're a EU citizen, you're not a UK citizen, etc., whatever the requirements are. Otherwise, they may only need to know you're over 18. Great. In another jurisdiction, even within the EU, you might need to be over 20. Great. All you need to do is attest that. You don't need to send it. If they want more detail, it's up to you whether you deliver it. Then that applies to businesses as well as individuals. And I think that's very important. We're solving a problem for retail users on one side, but we're also solving a problem for institutional users, because the amount of money that gets laundered through in the UK, it's the American sweet shops. They're all up and down Regent Street and other streets. The councils keep shutting them down. There's those sort of things. But it's about making sure everything's clean. And that includes the assets. So I'm getting some Ethereum, or I'm got a bit of Bitcoin, or I might be buying Polygon or ADA, whatever. Doesn't matter what the asset is. So we're enabling traditional finance and traditional businesses to work in tokenized environments in a clean way. And that's our goal. So we have two sides. One, retail, to make sure you control your identity and you're compliant before you go, rather than worry about someone knocking at your door or you're getting a letter, please explain. And you're like, well, I don't know how I'm going to do that. And you can't figure out, because somebody may have used dirty tokens and you've got them in your wallet, and then they get seized by the local authorities, because that's an enforcement. Okay. I've actually been through one of those when I was a CTO, where we had to freeze a wallet or freeze an account, and it had a very significant sum in. And that was because the FCA and crime enforcement said, well, we're unsure about this, because it had been used several transactions back for something illegal. It was all sorted out, and luckily, because we had good, clear records, although I think it was a bit marginal whether we should allow the transaction to go. But the point about it was, you need to have that. If you haven't got it, then that's likely to be seized, proceeds of crime, or whatever they want to call it. Or for a back tax bill. There's a whole lot of different things that can happen. So, yeah, we've really got two communities, but it's about enabling that clean operational environment so you can use
Okay.
it and take advantage of it without worrying.
So entry protocol is basically for those who wants to tokenize the digital assets and make it compliance, right? Is that how I understand in simple words?
Yep. But it's also for the individual user to ensure that they're compliant in dealing with their assets or their identity without having to
Yeah,
worry about it.
and this is very important. I remember maybe 3 or 4 years ago where a bunch of, tokens released, people were investing into the tokens, and suddenly, people just realized that it's impossible to find the owner of the token issuer because we're gone. So nobody did any proper, due diligence on those people. We just simply minted tokens and sold it to many people, and people basically being scammed, let's say. So I think it's so important what you do, because people can prevent themselves. Compliance solutions like this can secure people, not just only people but also the businesses and also potential investors too. So everybody should know what is the owner of a digital asset, and somebody who is actually investing, we also need to secure the funds or capital.
One of the interesting things is most regulators don't think a wallet address is sufficient. And it's fair enough. Who controls it? Is that a real person or is it a bot? And by the way, if you think about our solution, that could also work with AI agents, because you would know who the AI agent is and who controls it. That's really important. Just because it's a wallet address. But people in the future are going to use it for agentic shopping. Suddenly these things are going to get very complex.
Yeah. I'm curious about your, starting point. So I really would like to understand, what is the story of Entry Protocol? How did you start this?
It was really interesting. So it started out of Lithuania. It wasn't called Entry at the time because it was solving a problem with identity as well as how to ensure clean assets. And it started doing some various things and was looking at just using blockchain and nodes where, say, a bank or another financial institution would actually do the checking or attestation that the assets are clean. Not a bad idea, by the way. That's quite traditional. So right now, things like government bonds or state bonds or local municipality bonds will be issued by a trusted bank, and they will control the distribution and sale, etc. That's all very good in TradFi, but it sure as hell doesn't work in DeFi, and it sure doesn't really efficient in blockchain because the wallet address doesn't count. When I was doing my doctorate, as I said, I wrote a book called The Compliance Revolution, and a friend of mine said, you should really have a look at these guys because I think they're tackling what you want to tackle. And I looked at it and saw what they were trying to do and went, yes. So that's when I got involved. We did a bit of rename. We became Entry because we're an entry for both sides of the market, traditional and, individuals and Web3. That's important. The second thing is we did a bit of a pivot, still the same concept, but now we're using AI, because the problem with just people doing it or firm doing it, when do they update? There's a regulatory change, or there's been a notice issued by, example, HMRC in the UK. If it's over, say, £1,000, you need to do this, this, and this, or prepaid tax. God knows that the rules change so regularly. Even under MiCA, different countries have different interpretations of rules, maybe on age, transaction size, some tokens are banned. It's a nightmare. So by using AI and effectively leveraging its, the ability to absorb large amounts of information, we can at least identify a risk before it happens and what's appropriate and not appropriate. The interesting thing is most transactions, at least 80% of them, occur within a jurisdiction. So it's usually straightforward. But as we all know, in Web3, or certainly in the tokenized world, I've got an address. Who owns it and where the hell are they located? Cayman Islands, maybe? You know what I mean? It's so, just because they've got a .eu web domain, or FR for France, or whatever it is, that doesn't mean that that's where they're located.
You can buy any domain, whichever you want. It might be com, EU, and doesn't matter. And you can be located, as you said, in Panama, for example. I think it's really important just to make sure that you are dealing with the right people and, real people, not scammers. You're going to avoid, some potential fraud. Okay, so the capital is very important for the startups. And in your business, how did you start? How you just take from the ground? Or did you get any investors or backers who are supporting you and funding your initial business, or you just bootstrapping and funding your business on your own?
We got some angel investors and we got a bit of bootstrapping as well. And to be fair, a lot of us have put a lot of time in, not at our real cost, if that or rate. I mean, that's normal. I've been in startups at least half a dozen times, if not more. One of the things I think about startups is a lot of startups, even before they fail, they don't take into account paying themselves or the people that work for them. They might pour money on marketing events or whatever. That works for a short while, but if you don't pay yourself, then your business isn't going to be a valid business anyhow, if you know what I mean. So you've got to think of all these things. Also, if you get people involved, you'd also like them to have skin in the game. It doesn't mean you have to pay straight up front, or you know, there are ways of doing it, but they have to see, and you cannot not budget for it. Otherwise, it's a weekend hobby.
What startups basically do in most of the cases, if we cannot pay the wages for the people who are working in the project, sometimes we give some piece of equity, right? Just to motivate them, to make them have skin in the game.
Yeah, you need to work it out. You can do small things. We need to be a bit further on in our journey, which at the rate we're going is not a problem. But interestingly enough, I worked for a company in New Zealand. And because the nearest cafes were quite a walk away, and if somebody walked away to go grab a coffee and some lunch, they might be away for 20, 30 minutes. So the owner did two things. Firstly, he provided lunch, a really nice foods and meats and, you know, whatever you want every day. That was the first thing. Second thing he did was everybody from the receptionist to anybody in the warehouse everywhere got a week's salary if we made quarter targets. So if the sales guys asked somebody at 5 to 5 before they could, you know, leave for the day, could they get a shipment out to a client? Guess what? The warehouse guys would probably stay and it'd be out. Why? Because they know if they make target, they're getting a week's salary. Well, it's interesting. You get guys from the warehouse coming and talking to you and going, how's it going? Can we make it more efficient? Is there anything we can do that did we better? You know, what are the problems? Because they realized if they don't help us sell, so it could be even the receptionist go, you know, how would you like me to deal with this person? Can I do it better? It was a very interesting, and I've done my own business as well. When you start having staff, you then have to think about a whole lot of things like how do you incent them? How do you keep them engaged? Because your business, most businesses are still about people. I know with AI and that, you'll maybe have less people. You won't have hundreds, you need hundreds, but you're still going to have people. And on the other side, you're selling to somebody, although again, we might have agentic AI. But again, you're still somewhere along the line, there's people you've got to deal with. So you've got to engage in relationships and make things happen.
How your team is working basically right now, what are the critical roles what you have in your team, and how you motivate them to have skin in the game?
Two things, top tokens. Because we're a foundation, we don't have any, you know, we've got money, as in we've got some seed funding and stuff, but we don't have, you can't get equity, but we've got tokens. And there's a whole lot of other things that it's really interesting. Some people are not totally motivated by money. It's just solving a really cool problem. So we have a CTO, we have a security guy, really, really good. In fact, sometimes it's like, yeah, he's really good. He's very keen on the detail and, you know, because we're a compliance team. Imagine if we had a whole lot of security problems. That'd really look good. So that's an important thing. We have a CMO, we have a chief operating officer, and we have other people that are helping doing various things. We have advisors. So we've got a range of people. So the advisors are obviously with tokens, so that helps them. But they've got a lot, you know, locks, so they actually have to be actively involved for a period of time.
What about business development itself? As I understand, majority of the startups, we just basically build the product, but we miss sometimes, to have salespeople or business developers who actively working on community building, business development, getting the right strategic partnerships in place, just to make sure that the business is growing from the business perspective, not just only from technical point of view.
Yeah, that's really important. So we do have BD. I mean, we've got BD partners as well. I think everybody in the business knows the pitch because we all talk to people. You have friends, family, or, Web3 connections. What we have engaged is we're working with a great agency, CodeCraft is their umbrella. And so we're doing things like community building, we have questing, we have a Discord, we have X and regular posts. So we're doing lots of things. My background's more tradful, but I understand because I've also been chief marketing officer for a very large American corporation a long time ago. So I had product management teams working for me. And so marketing's really, really important. And engagement with people, getting your community engaged is really important. So we're doing that very effectively. The ramp up's been great because people can actually see the need for it. It's interesting. Institutions realize there's a need, not sure how to go about it. Individuals go, yeah, maybe. I've had some interesting conversations with Web3 people. They go, oh, well, why worry? Because there won't be any enforcement. My understanding from some reasonably solid sources is that starting January, February next year, our friends from the EU will start enforcements on MiCA regulations. It sounds a bit unfair. They'll probably target smaller projects because it's a lot easier than targeting big tech ones. But the point about it is they will start enforcement actions. And when you get one or two of them, in trouble, then they'll look to a solution like ours, or they'll need to. But more importantly, if I'm doing stuff that's either Web3 or even Web2 and I need to be compliant, so, gaming, you have to be over a certain age. Well, there's our ID and you've still got control of it. They don't have it, but they know you're over that age. You're an EU citizen and you're resident in, say, France. Go. Off we go. Done. No problems. Whereas otherwise, not the individual, but the site or the owner of the site suffer big fines. On the flip side, for the individual, it's like, well, you're going to have to report that for tax. You've got to be able to know that you know who you're dealing with. If you end up looking like you're laundering money, and you can say, well, no, I wasn't. Here it is all clear. There's all those sort of things that are going to start happening. So both individuals and organizations are going to need to deal with this. The sooner, the better.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Rodney, can you tell me what is the biggest challenge right now in your business, in your opinion?
The biggest challenge right now is, like all things, because we're a startup, is making sure we've got enough runway and the correct funding and the correct partners. It's all very well to get funding in. I've been through this once in a business a long time ago, where we had a partner come in, gave us a reasonable amount of money, not a lot, and then they started demanding things and actually diverted us from what we were actually there to do. We had to buy them out, cost us money and time, and it delayed us by about 18 months. Our double challenges, our biggest one is making sure we've got the runway and the funding. So that's a lot of work I do, because it's one of the things you do as a startup CEO. Make sure you've got the money in place so you can bring people on, meet your commitments, and meet your goals, set realistic goals. I mean, the market's really strange at the moment. We're coming up to Christmas, which is always tight. We've had a couple of really good successes in the last few days. So things are good, but it's still hard. You can't stop working on it. And that's a big challenge. The other one is finding appropriate partners, not, I can make a quick buck on this. And you see a lot of people with the market downturn, some of the KOLs and some parties out there seem to think, I want a whole lot of big money up front. I'm not going to have any skin in the game and I can dump straight on day one.
So let's come back to the funding part. So as I remember, you were saying about the business angel investments into your business. Majority of early stage projects were starting from angels. We're getting some investments, small tickets, reinvesting the money into the building the MVP. And then after it's completed, we're going to venture capitals. And this is the right time for them to start, raising capital from venture capitals. So where you are right now, are you still working on this business angel strategy, or you are looking for venture capitals?
We're actually working with venture capitals because we've got the identity platform built, running, and we'll be running a pilot with a very large organization who will be using our token, that's really good. I mean, it's gaming, but they've got over 100 million users. And every time they do something, they have to use one of our tokens, get any compliance check, get a KYC AML done. All those things are going to require these tokens. And it's a circular economy, very powerful. That's just one. If you started with a community of 100 million users, and it's not like they're going to hold them, speculate or sell them, they're going to keep circling because they have to keep paying for things. Some of it will be paid by the gaming sites. Others may pay for them individually because I want my identity. I want to use it for the I'm working with these guys. I need some identity, and that's going to be. Regulators may want it because they want to use gas fee to find out about, if they're entitled to. There's a whole lot of parties involved, and we're also going to have staking, so other bits and pieces. But it is trying to figure out what are the biggest problems and what are the appropriate partners and how you move forward and have the right vision. So right now we have we're just going through the process, getting out on the various app stores because we use really good encryption in the identity. It's a little bit tougher because we're using the new algorithm, supposedly quantum proof, but it's a factor of 15 better than most existing wallets. I mean, a lot of them are all shifting over to it, but it's not easy to rewrite your security application and your encryption, etc., to get ahead of quantum. Especially if you've got a large user base, it's not as easy as it seems. We're lucky we started with that in mind. And we've got that. We've got a proof of concept. We're moving into MVP for our AI tool.
You're looking for venture capitals right now, and you are trying to get as many contacts as you potentially can to discuss the future opportunities to partner up and get maybe potential investment. Majority of investors who I know, venture capitals, we normally want to see some huge traction, and sometimes MVP is not enough. We also want to see the revenue or maybe huge communities. So in this case, if you will speak of venture capitals, how do you think, what might be your response to venture capital? If we will raise the questions about the revenues and customers, about your customer growth and so on.
Okay, well, for Web3 type VCs or the ones that are interested in the tokens, we can show really good engagement. We have a Discord server, I think it's about 40,000 on it now. Over 180,000 tweets have gone out on our X, and I can't remember how many followers, it might be 30,000. So, those are all ramping up. Obviously, they want to see more because it's a bit like the exchanges. If you don't have a big community, they're not interested. So that's that side. On the revenue, we're pre-revenue. Until we build things, you can't get out there. But those gaming sites, which they own 40, that's over 100 million people. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're running our pilot in January. We're ready to go. So there's already a demand for tokens before you start, because they're going to use the tokens, obviously.
Okay, thank you. Even if you are not getting revenue, the numbers of your community or size of your community is really important to show, because we need something to see before we're making decisions to invest or not. Just looking back, how do you think, what is your secret sauce and what is your advantage comparing with other potentially competitors in the market?
I think our secret sauce is two things. One, we're a foundation, so no one company can control it and say, I want all the details of all your users, right? That's not what we're about, first thing. Second thing is we're combining smart technologies. So there are zero knowledge proofs. The way we're leveraging the AI is very unique. And also at the back end, the blockchain is used for a complete audit trail, which is one of the things I used to talk about when I was working for PwC and EY and explaining blockchain to people. That's really important. It's an immutable record of what the hell's gone on, who's done what. But just looking at it's not going to give you any detail. You have to point back to, and request information from a user, etc., unless you've already pre-given it. But you will still have to give that approval. So there's a clear record of what's going on. So other projects. The other thing is you either have to use their wallet. I mean, we do have a wallet, but it's an identity wallet, right? And we can attest to any other chain that you are who you say you are. Fine. It includes as an organization or an individual. That's important. Second thing, we're looking at regulations globally. Obviously, we're starting with MiCA. That's what we're ingesting at the moment. As we expand, we'll need to put in, expand. It depends on the regulatory, which use case you use it first for. I mean, you can use it for government. You can use it for all these things. We've got a lot of things going on and a lot of ways of dealing with it. And I think our difference is we're not saying it's a closed environment. We're also not saying you can only use it in Europe, or you can only use it in Hong Kong, or you can only use it in Singapore.
I'm just very curious, to understand the legal frameworks in multiple, continents. For example, I understand in Europe we have MiCA regulation, MiCA licensing. What about Asia and US, for example? Are we going to use the same frameworks?
No. Singapore has the mass, and they've got a reasonably good set of regulations about exchanges, DeFi. They've got some good definitions. Switzerland's got some good ones. If you can do MiCA, you'll be able to do Switzerland. You go to the UAE, clear rules. HKMA has been writing more rules about what you can do there. Australia's doing consultation. New Zealand, they've got some definitions already. Even in the UK here, they've now defined things like Bitcoin and Ethereum as a digital asset. There's getting more clarity, but if you look at it, those clarity is coming often through legislation, and then it becomes regulations, and then it becomes enforcement. It's coming through. So there are, but as you rightly point out, the subtlety, even within MiCA in Europe, the limits in France are going to be, or the constraints are different to Germany, are different to Italy, are different to Lithuania. They have to follow the framework, but how they implement in their own legislation within their country may or may not be, significantly different. Some won't be, some will be. That's, I think, where we're going to have a big advantage. Traditional, where you have big monolithic databases and they share it over the web and stuff, that's great, but how long does it take to update it? A friend of mine's just made partner in a law firm, and he specializes in litigation to retrieve, like I sent her the wrong wallet address, and the exchange just got some of these are big numbers, like 1 million, less than that as well. Or we're going through divorce. I'm pretty sure my husband's got, whatever. He deals with all of this. And he says When there are new regulatory changes, which are happening all the time, so they've just passed an act over here, very clarifying what digital assets are for the courts. The interesting thing about that is how quickly do they end up in your system or your compliance department? He was saying often it takes 2 to 3 weeks after they've come out. And sometimes these are retrospective regulations, which makes it even worse. So you've got a whole lot of things. Oh, shit, that was legal. Now it's not. What do I need to do? Am I going to get fined because it's gone through? Oh, you didn't prepare well enough. You looked at the draft. You didn't follow the draft guidelines. Yeah, but they're only a draft. It doesn't matter. You try tell that to HMRC or the equivalent in your country. It's really interesting and challenging. I think that's where we differentiate. And I think that's going to be a significant differentiator.
You look like a very experienced person. You've been there, you've been in many, other companies in the past. How do you think what separates successful founders from unsuccessful founders? Did you spot any specific, elements which can highlight the successful one from unsuccessful one?
2 things: persistence, and secondly, fail fast, pivot. One of the things I see in big corporates, and I've watched it so often because I've been involved in the process, there's a saying called flogging a dead horse. In other words, most people know what they're trying to do is not going to work. It's a failure, and they still spend huge amounts of money. One of the things you find in big corporates is they get a project going, they get a huge amount of funding for it. One of the ones had over $1 billion Australian dollars in it. Long story short, all they did was they shrunk the requirements down to meet what they're actually going to deliver, which was not what they got the funding for. And it happens quite often. I've come into banks and other things and been doing consulting work, and I'm going, how can this project be allowed to go for so long when you're clearly not going to make the outcome you were set there for? A lot of IT projects, not just in banking but in financial services, I would think that at least 70% of them do not succeed on their original declared outcomes.
It happens a lot also when you can see somebody starting business with one idea and we end up with another idea which works better. So I think adaptiveness, to the changes, it's really important to have this mindset, change quickly, fail fast, and also be adaptable to the changes. Those are the things are very important.
I think adaptable. Also, I remember looking to hire a guy and he had an MSc in computer science, brilliant guy. And he came into me and he said in the first opening line of his interview, he said, I've got finished my MSc. I don't need to learn anything else now. By the way, didn't get the job. I mean, I started out on mainframes. Now I've been looking at things like VR, it's virtual reality. I've done things with lots with AI. I've got about 2 AI, frameworks running on my laptop. And I'm the CEO. I'm not the guy doing the coding. Our people are a lot smarter than I am. But the more important point is you need to learn and adapt and take criticism. The military had a good thing for me, which I think is a really good one. If you make a mistake, you can make it once. Don't make the same damn mistake twice. The other thing they say is make a decision. The procrastination I see in the bigger the organization, everyone's worrying about, will that cause my promotion problem? Will I upset, and then nobody wants to make a decision. And that becomes a big problem. And also admit your mistakes. I've made lots of cock-ups over the years.
That's really good advice. Everything what you said is like the key points, everybody should know. And, it's important. Thanks for sharing those advices. You are CEO of a free company. And as you said, the market is uncertain right now. It's so volatile market. How you deal with the pressure on daily basis if something goes wrong and not happening like you expected this to happen?
There's always things changing, going wrong, or not what you expected, firstly. Secondly, focus on the outcome you want, not on the tools or methods. Sometimes when I was a lot younger, I used to be very anal. If this is the way we always do it, this is the way we're going to do it. The military is a bit like that, but it's built out of tradition. Although they do teach you the most important part's the outcome. You're either going to stop the ship sinking, whatever the challenge you've got at the time. If the normal way was to bring 60 engineers in to fix it, if you're in combat or you're in the Southern Ocean, you're not going to have 60 engineers. You need to fix it. So you improvise. But the outcome's still your critical bit. So for me, it's trying to keep the vision in my mind, making sure we're all aligned, and we surface the exceptions, the real problems that are going to stop us. There's a guy called Stephen Covey. I don't know whether you've ever known him, 7 Habits, 7 Highly Successful People. And he talks about the big rocks. So every day, you try to figure out what are the big rocks at the moment and deal with those. Not worry about the little bits and pieces. Human nature says if you're distracted or stressed, you'll focus on the little things so you get a tick, I've done that. But it doesn't achieve your goal, if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay, good answer. How long you are running this business so far?
The actual foundation's probably about, well, actually involved with the whole thing about 8 months. The actual way we've set up and, effectively pivoted to the foundation because we're on that neutral, non-controlled thing. That'd be about, 4 to 6 months now. To me, it's all one journey. We just got to find the right vehicle. It's like I want to deliver flowers. Then I've suddenly switched. I'm actually going to deliver firewood. Well, shit, that's the wrong vehicle. So I need a truck. The outcome we want and the vision and the problem we're solving hasn't changed, but sometimes it's got bigger and you need to deal with some other bits and pieces. So you've got to figure out how to do that effectively.
Okay, so it's relatively new business. At the beginning, you are learning many things. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, let's say. So I hope you learned a lot of valuable lessons. If you would start the same project from the beginning, from today, what you would do differently?
Probably spend a bit earlier, spend a bit more time with potential clients to get our market messaging. The concept's solid, the problem's correct, but the way you present that messaging, I mean, we've changed that. We've evolved that. We're a lot better at our messaging now. I think it's the messaging is really important. The other thing is understanding the opportunity, but not trying to do the whole lot at once. There's an old saying which is don't try to boil the ocean dry. Boil a cup, or a pot. As we've evolved, we see lots of different opportunities, and what we have to keep doing is make sure we just focus on what we need to do, get out the door, and then we can do these other things. And also that when you talk to VCs and other parties, they have often different focus or things that they see as really important and biggest opportunity. So you've got to weigh up. We had one small VC, and it wasn't a big ticket, and they wanted us to do this, and this, and I'm like going, it's going to take us longer to do all that than actually get what we need to do done and bring in all the other money that's coming. It just doesn't make sense. But for them, it was really, really important. So I found that a bit frustrating. A similar side to that, it's really understanding what you're trying to achieve and not wasting time. And best example of that, I remember we did a thing called Virtual Spectator, 3D animation of real time off the America's Cup. I was the technical director. We built the thing, the media center, a whole lot of other stuff. And our CEO got excited about government grants for innovation and technology. So we got one of those. It cost me in time and my staff and myself more than we actually got in. It looked good on the, government innovation technology grant. Big tick. So I suppose it's in PR, but we probably spent twice as much in my developers' time and my time doing all the damn paperwork for the amount of money we got.
We already spoke about your cap table. So basically, it's majority of them are angel investors, right? No venture capitals. You don't have any backers like venture capitals?
Yeah, we have. We've got some, and we've got some interesting partners now that really, really interesting partners that we're working with as well. Some of them, in the end, have decided to work with our technology provider. The ones that provide some of the elements, which makes sense because if you want equity, that's the way you go. That's another part. For us, we've got guys who are traditional Web3 are looking for. They know that this compliance thing's coming. How do we get involved in this? So they're happy with the tokens. They understand. They see the opportunity and things like that. So we've got 2 or 3 of those now.
Many startups I know we are struggling to get users, to get community, to grow it. And I'm just wondering, maybe you can advise for some of the, let's say, early stage founders, what kind of strategies we could use?
We have. I mean, as I said, CodeCraft would be really, really good. And as I said, they're an umbrella. They've got a whole lot of, different areas. And we've got socials. We're active on the socials. We've got questing. in other words, you need to engage for the Web3. That's really important community. The other thing is engaging at events. Getting involved in events and various party. The things that make sense. And the third thing is, like I'm on here today. I mean, I'm probably doing 2 or 3 either AMAs, podcasts, or YouTubes at the moment a week. So you've got to put yourself out there. And the other thing is, everybody in the team is promoting. So they're talking to their friends. The thing you find is a lot of engineers don't want to talk to other people because although they might talk to other engineers, they're not necessarily overly social. Marketing people, flair and away they go. And our CMO is really good. But everybody has a responsibility to at least explain. If they're involved in the project, obviously you want them to have that same vision, and communicate it. There's nothing worse than where senior management have a vision and they talk just between 2 or 3 people, and then I can't understand why the rest of the team has no idea what the hell we're talking about, and either doesn't give the correct message or doesn't give any message at all because they're unsure.
Yeah.
It's everybody on board. It's looking at all the things you can do. Can you do PR? Can you engage a PR company? Well, they work for tokens. Great. Let's see, how do we do that? Can you do this? Can you do that? So you need to really focus on communicating, but you should know your audience. I mean, our Web3 community is really exciting because it's about having self-sovereign identity, being able to transact safely and not worry about things. That's important. Plus, there's some interesting opportunities for them. Others, it's through influencers and KOLs, all those different things, but you need to engage with them. But you need to look at, are they going to provide value to you?
I see the most common situations when startups basically going to raise capital and we have 0 followers on socials. We have no PR activities.
Yep.
And we're not visible in the market. And this is where I think really bad mistake what we're doing. My recommendation would be for the startups to be active as soon as possible before you even go and speak with investors.
You cannot talk to a VC. And also, if you want to list on an exchange, if you've got no users, no community, one, you won't get VCs, but two, you won't get on an exchange. Because, I mean, how many thousands of tokens are out there that have been started in the last couple of years still actually there and still exist? So you need to prove a reason. One of the reasons I'm excited about us is we've got a utility. We've got a reason to exist. We're solving a problem. And to me, that's always an important thing. Some things I'm going, what's that doing? Why? Now I may have a bias, I probably do, and everyone got excited about NFTs like, Bored Ape Yacht Club. I think that's quirky and fun, but are you solving a problem? It's adding an extra dimension, which is really cool in Web3, and some of these things will actually turn into, I don't know, interesting solutions like animations or entertainment, God knows. But the more important point is, you've got to look at those sort of things and that sort of community. And if you don't build a community, you're not going to be able to go forward with VCs. And then if you can't go with VCs, you're certainly not going to be able to go to exchanges.
Yeah, I agree. And so I think the people who will be watching this episode, they will get this message and we will keep focus on that. I'm just curious to understand, do you have any reward system for the users, for the people who are following you on socials? Is it possible for me as a regular guy, just to get some piece of a tokens for doing something for you?
Yeah. We'll go have a look at the entry site because we've got a Discord server. We've got stuff on X. So yes, there's questing and various things happening. So we've got rewards to engage the community. So that's exactly right there.
Many startups, we start a business and sometimes we are not working on idea validation. Do you have any advice for the startups? How actually we can validate idea fast just to make sure that we are building the right thing?
You've got to talk to your potential target. And if you don't know anybody in that industry, how can you target that industry? Not to say you can't, but you need some way to validate with who or what community or what industry or wherever you're trying to target. You need to validate that. You could do it through a survey. There's a lot of good survey tools. I did some of that for my doctorate. However, some of the responses are about it were not particularly, I was going to be really crass, but are not particularly useful. So you need to ensure, and that doesn't mean that you've got a bad idea, but it could be ahead of its time or you haven't got the right market fit. You need to work those things. The other thing is you can pivot, but you've got to start somewhere. Having a visual or some facts to back it up, or, it's all great to have a good idea, but then you've got to test it. Does the market exist? Is it a problem that needs to be solved? The old joke is I'm building a better mousetrap. So what? What's wrong with the current ones? Why am I going to change? It's like most people don't change their banks. They will start having to because there's going to be CBDC, stable. There's a lot of reasons things will start changing, but most people don't change. It works. I don't care. My mobile app's okay. And they change if it becomes they can't use it properly. They have problems. All those things will impact their stickiness, not anything else. So if you aren't solving a real problem, that's the challenge. So you need to actually ask. And ask if it's an industry you're not familiar with or you think you're familiar with, still ask somebody else that is an expert or has good knowledge of that area.
Okay. Somebody just told me that sometimes it's also a good idea maybe to try sell the product which does not exist, but you can sell it and check if people are buying this. And later on, you can return the money back to the people and say, look, we're not ready to launch, but at least you're going to have a strong indication that people are willing to buy it. And then you can start building just because you know that this is needed in the market.
Yeah, that works for some industries. Yeah, well, that's actually a good idea, but it works for some industries. And our friend Larry Ellison started selling Oracle databases before they'd actually built the damn thing properly. So he sold it to a big US client when they didn't really have something that was working properly. I mean, that is one way of doing it. I think nowadays, if you try sell to an institutional or an established corporate or traditional finance and you haven't got anything, that won't work because they go, show it. Does it meet all these compliance requirements, PCI, whatever you have to deal with, and it depends on what the product is. With individual consumers, you can do, there's quite a few Kickstarter, things like that, but do a Kickstarter equivalent. If you're an early investor, this is what you're going to get out of it. So you can test it. So if people are willing to buy on that and they know it's not coming tomorrow, but it might be 3 months from now, then that's okay. And if you can't, then, but I don't disagree with it. But again, think about who you're dealing with or your target market because they are different.
For the people who will be watching this episode, can you tell who is your ideal customer? What is the profile of this ideal customer?
Okay. Retail user is somebody that wants to hold digital assets, wants to maybe cross-border payments, wants to use it for an investment, so they might be holding BTC, and they also know that they need to be compliant because enforcement's going to come down for either taxation or identity and all those things. That we'd be a great partner for that. On the other side, it's the institutional guys, somebody that wants to tokenize something they want to trade. They're going to start accepting stable coins or they're going to start accepting Bitcoin, all these things. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a traditional finance business and like a broker or anything like that. It could be a construction company. It could be it doesn't really matter what it is. Anybody, because all of a sudden, how are they going to prove that it is compliant and that the auditors aren't going to go nuts or, and under which jurisdictional rules are you going to work with?
Speaking about the strategic partnership, so I know that you are developing the network of partners, and this is how you grow. Do you have any specific partnerships, what you're looking for at the moment? And maybe the people who will be watching this episode also might be thinking that let's collaborate together, So if you can tell us a bit about with whom you would like to have a partnership, maybe we can actually help you out somehow.
That'd be really good. So we've probably got 3 groups. Partners that actually help implement, so get this going with organizations because they want, in other words, use us. Web3 projects that suddenly realize they're going to need to be MiCA compliant, they need KYC, travel rule, and things like that. And then traditional finance or traditional projects that are looking to tokenize things and either Web3 or even Web2, but they're looking to use tokenization for whatever they're doing. That could include gaming, because if there's any value in those, it's covered by MiCA. It's not a if, but, or maybe. If you buy assets in a game, you actually still have to be compliant.
Where you plan to list your token in the future? Do you have any specific partnerships already in place, like exchanges?
We've got target exchanges, and because we're working with CoCraft, we've actually got some really good relationships. So Kraken's one of them, BitGet. There's about 3 or 4. Potentially, it's very complex and it'll impact on timing. We could have Binance Alpha. We're aiming for 2 to 3 tier 1s as our main exchanges. And good thing about CoCraft is they've done Portal to Bitcoin and a couple of others, and they've got them successfully listed on 4 or 5 tier 1s. So, that's where we're looking at the moment. So it's easy for people to get involved. And, again, we've got to manage the liquidity. We've got market makers as well. So we're doing all the things, and you can't do it the week before your TGE.
When is your TGE? Do you know the specific date?
It's going to be end of January. We're still a bit fluid, and it depends on what happens if we do something with Binance Alpha. They've only got slots, I think, around mid-February. For all of these guys, we've got to go back and say, and we're on target to get over 100,000 users. Those are the numbers you have to go to the exchanges with. If you just go, I've got 1,000 followers, they're going to go, nah. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg, but we're on target and we're doing the right things in the right trajectory to deliver the numbers that enables us to get onto the exchanges, that enables us to work with appropriate.
I hope you're going to reach this goal, and I really wish you good luck with listing on exchanges. I'm pretty sure that you sooner or later will get 100K followers. I really want to thank you that you came today to this episode and you were sharing your experience. I think it's going to be very valuable and beneficial for the viewers and subscribers what we have. Our community is growing, and I really wish you good luck with your project. I hope some of the followers who will be watching this episode is going to become your followers too.
Thank you very much, Darius. A real pleasure to be on here today. And yeah, some good questions. And it actually makes me stop and think sometimes, because you sometimes get so in, you don't actually think about, well, what should I be doing, or why am I not being rational about something? But overall, no, it was really good. I really enjoyed discussion, and I hope people get some value out of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here.